Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Extending Your Fortinet Next Generation Firewalls to Kubernetes. So before we start, we have a few housekeeping items to cover on this presentation and the webinar platform. And foremost, we hope that everybody, in this kind of unprecedented time is safe, and your family is safe, and all your loved ones and friends are safe. So that's the most important thing, and I think it's great. These online webinars that we're doing and online events we're going to be doing a lot more of. So stay tuned for those. So first off, today's webinar will be made available on demand after the live session and will be accessible through the same link that you're using now. It should take about 15 to 20 minutes for the webinar to be back on BrightTalk in on demand, and it will also be available on the Tigera website. In the attachments area, there is a link to the joint Fortinet Tigera solution brief, and you can go ahead and have a look at that. But we're also going to be having some more content and special offers for you at the end of the webinar, so stick with us. If you want copies of today's slides, they can be made available. You just have to email contact@tigera.io to request your copy, and somebody will get back to you and take care of getting you the copy of the slides. But most importantly, we would love to hear from you today during today's presentation. So if you have a question, please do not hesitate to ask it through the Ask a Question tab in your BrightTalk interface. We may decide to take questions as they come if it makes sense, but we definitely will reserve as much time as needed at the end of the webinar for a full Q&A session. So without further ado, let me introduce today's speaker, Nico Kabar. So Nico is a Senior Solutions Architect at Tigera. He is previously with Docker and Cisco, so brings a very good background and heritage to this topic today. And he lives at the intersection of containers, Kubernetes, networking, and the cloud. And that is that's a crossroad if I've ever heard one. So so Nico, welcome. And I will turn it over to Nico, and you guys are in very capable hands. So Nico, it's all you.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thanks for taking the time to tune in today with all the craziness. Hopefully, this webinar is going to be informative. Please, as Michael said, please feel free to raise any questions, and I'll try to take them as I see them. I'll either address them on the way or leave some time towards the end to address them. So let's get started with the presentation today. And the agenda for today's agenda, we're going to be talking about our newest integration with our partner Fortinet. Tigera and Fortinet had been working together for quite some time to offer this integration. I'll start off with a quick overview of Calico Enterprise for those who are not aware of just Calico and Calico Enterprise and what we offer and what problems we solve. And then I'll walk you through some of the challenges that we've seen with some of the customers that kind of led to us working very closely with Fortinet for this very unique integration. And then I'll do a quick demo for the solution. I'll wrap up with some key takeaways, and we'll have some time for questions and answers towards the end. So if you're not too familiar with Calico or Tigera, let me start kind of by quickly introducing them to you. So I mean, with the spike in containers and Kubernetes adoption, one of the key kind of prominent projects that's out there is Project Calico that sits at the CNI, the Container Network Interface layer. So it's one of the most ubiquitous CNIs that's used across hundreds and hundreds of thousands of clusters out there. Tigera, the company, is behind Project Calico, so we're kind of the inventor and the maintainer of the project itself. Yeah, of course, it's open source. We've known kind of more than 150,000 known clusters out there today with a very active, collaborative, and global community around the project itself. Now, from a Calico enterprise perspective, we take kind of the power of open source at the CNI level, and we kind of extended to offer a full suite of kind of enterprise-focused network security for Kubernetes and beyond, actually. So with extensive feature set for the enterprises to secure their Kubernetes clusters, whether they're on-prem or in the cloud or in the hybrid cloud. We have a wide variety of customers, in the financial services, SaaS, and others that are using both kind of Calico as well as Calico Enterprise today to secure their workloads. So we have basically from a Tigera and Calico Enterprise, the enterprise solution, we have three key core capabilities that usually resonate well with the type of challenges that our customers are facing along their Kubernetes journey. One is around security controls, right? This is kind of how, at an enterprise level, you can control, basically enforce your security policies required for overall compliance across the board, especially if you have multi-tenant or multi-team, multi-application running on the same cluster. Access controls in terms of just providing overall access to the different endpoints and applications with fine-grained policies and providing pod level access to external services. And overall, visibility and troubleshooting for network admins or SecDevOps, to have full visibility into what is actually going on from a network perspective across the cluster, and that can be pretty powerful. So please remember, those are kind of the three key areas that why kind of a lot of enterprises are choosing Calico Enterprise to secure their Kubernetes networks today. So in terms of where we can actually run, as I mentioned earlier, the key, all the managed Kubernetes services today in the cloud-based, whether we're talking EKS, AKS, GKE, all use Calico for policy today. And that kind of speaks to the confidence that our partners put in the product today. And of course, for also on-prem solutions like OpenShift and Rancher, you have the option to use Calico as well. So whether you're deploying clusters on-prem or in the cloud, Calico and Calico Enterprise can run, offering kind of a unique position to actually create policies and apply them regardless of where your Kubernetes cluster is running. In working with our customers today and our users, we've seen, and you probably have seen the slides if you kind of attended any of our meetups or sessions or CalicoCon around KubeCon, but you've seen that a lot of your users and the customers that have this kind of journey around adopting Kubernetes and microservice architectures, and kind of starting from kind of overall education around technology to testing it and kind of sandboxing it to going through piloting it and with select applications to production with a subset of application, and then kind of all the way to mass migration. We've seen various users come in different steps, and we are basically seeing some common challenges and use cases that we're trying to address, and we have been addressing along with our customers and users. To be specific, three key use cases are kind of top of mind with a lot of you. One is around pod level access to external databases and services and APIs, which is a very common use case. You come up with applications that you have containerized and you're ready kind of to move to Kubernetes. However, a lot of the dependencies, network-wise and communication-wise, there is still dependency for those applications and those pods to actually talk to external databases and services, whether they're within your environment or externally across the unknown or the internet. So that's kind of one use case, and securing those workloads to make sure that when they need to talk to external services and databases, they're actually doing it securely and adhering to the kind of the compliance requirements that your organization may have is one key area. The other is around visibility and troubleshooting, as I kind of alluded to earlier. There's definitely a lot of kind of uniqueness in just having a platform or a solution that offers both the users, that is the application owners, the application developers who are actually using the cluster, as well as the administrators from networking, from security, to have full visibility into what's going on. And since the CNI and Calico Enterprise come in at a very unique place in the stack, we have full understanding and very detailed logs of every connection that's happening across the cluster. And that is very powerful when we provide that level of tooling and power to the developers and the application owners, as well as the administrators, to have full visibility and troubleshooting capability in across the clusters. And finally, in terms of kind of implementing enterprise layer security controls, compliance and reporting controls that are both kind of provide the security administrator kind of that power to have that uniform enforcement, all while still giving the power to the individual developers and application owners to come up with their own best practices and policies on their own. So that's kind of the one key thing to remember. So when we were working with our kind of enterprise customers and our users, many of them have already, if we double click on the first use case, that is pod level access to external databases, services, APIs, many of them have already, like the story, like the capability that Calico provides. However, they already, have invested, a lot of resources over many years into their existing kind of firewalling infrastructure and security infrastructure, and they don't want to lose that, right? You don't want to be in a position of losing years of security controls that you had in place to secure your application databases and services. So this is kind of what brought us to this partnership with Fortinet. So basically, the challenge that some of our customers and kind of the Fortinet customers have brought up is, typically in traditional workloads, you had it was a very static kind of word in terms of the source IPs of the workloads that needed to talk to the databases or to external services. So you created your policies, you implemented your security controls with that assumption in mind. However, we're moving to a very dynamic, very ephemeral word right now, where containers and pods are spinning up and going down. They're coming up and using different IPs all the time. They're being launched on different worker nodes, and that brings a challenge of how you manage this. How you tighten the security, without losing years of extensive experience around that level of security. So in working with our partner Fortinet, we're working on a multi-year plan for a very tight integration between Calico Enterprise and the Fortinet kind of fabric, security fabric. In today's work, and this is based on the latest release from Calico Enterprise, that is version 2.7, we're talking specifically about the first step that we took together in this integration, and that is the integration between Calico Enterprise and FortiGate Manager. But rest assured that this is a multi-year integration development that's going to extend to also a two-way integration with FortiManager, so that Fortinet users can create the security controls in FortiManager, and have Calico Enterprise will enforce it in the cluster. You'll also see that we're working on integration with FortiGuard so that any communication to kind of bad IPs or hosts will be blocked at the source. And finally, we're working also on taking all the telemetry that we know and created by the Calico Enterprise to also be populated by FortiCM down the road as well. But one of the I want to double click on kind of the uniqueness of what we're doing today is that if Calico Enterprise is running across any Kubernetes cluster, whether it's running on a public cloud or your on-prem data center, you can now basically extend the power and the knowledge of what Calico Enterprise knows about your workloads and Kubernetes services, and kind of bridge that and connect that with your Fortinet environment. And that's kind of one of the key takeaways from this session. So if we double click on the current integration, which is kind of the first step in this journey with our partner, how we do this is Calico Enterprise has full understanding of what workloads are being deployed with what labels and across your cluster. We have full visibility into kind of the IP addresses, where they're being spun up, when they're going down, and basically when as part of this integration, Calico Enterprise deploys a new controller that's called basically the FortiGate controller that runs locally on the cluster, and it kind of watches for those different deployments. And using cloud native and Kubernetes native labeling schema, you can basically have Calico Enterprise push those IP addresses and source IP addresses and node information to FortiGate to create both address and address groups. So those are the only two things that we're controlling and writing today. So that now you have, if you're a FortiGate admin, now all of that information and data is dynamically populated for you. So you can actually continue using and creating your policies based on that. So again, this does not require any manual intervention. The only thing that you need to do is map out all the, basically associate what application labels you want to create with which address groups and blocks in Fortinet. And once you do that once, then the Calico Fortinet controller takes care of the rest and dynamically populates the FortiGate upstream so that you can have full visibility into those addresses, and you can create your own policies in FortiGate. So, and if we take a look, you kind of see that you will start seeing with this integration kind of Tigera managed objects in FortiGate. Again, we're not creating any policies here in FortiGate. We're not enforcing any policies. The only thing that we're doing is managing endpoints, basically taking the endpoints from your Kubernetes environment and pushing them upstream so you have full visibility into the workload and associated source IPs from the workers that they're running on them. So this is an example of the application I'll actually use for my demo. But you can see that in Fortinet now you can see the addresses for the Kubernetes worker nodes, as well as the association between the pods and where they're running on the node. So you can create your own policies based on that, or use existing policies, or just extend it to the pods that are running in Kubernetes today. So if there are no questions, I'm happy to jump into the demo right now. I think I usually like to showcase the demo. I'll keep it brief and to the point, but happy to take any questions that you have around this integration after the demo. So let me know when you see my screen. Actually, I'll probably do that. Just gonna log into my FortiGate environment here and familiarize you with what we have today. So we have this running I believe, on the public cloud today, demonstrating kind of the full capability. And one of the things that we needed to do initially was just to create an admin REST API admin for Calico Enterprise, so that the Calico controller that is running can actually make API calls to create those objects. That's kind of one of the first requirements to be able to do this integration. But other than that, if you look at the kind of the addresses today, you can see that those are my two worker nodes, my Kubernetes worker nodes, worker 1, worker 2, and you can see here that we already have a handful of address groups that you'll see how we're going to be managing them and how the controller is going to be managing them in just a bit. This is kind of those are the services that are running in as workloads, as pods in the cluster, and on the source or the details, where they're actually running on which worker 1 or worker 2. We also, in this kind of demo, the idea is that if you already have a FortiGate policy, in this case, for example, we want to allow the pods to go to and access resources on Microsoft 365, so they need to kind of reach this fully qualified domain name. This is how we're actually going to do it. If we take a look at the Tigera side, if many of you, if you haven't seen the Tigera dashboard, this is just kind of a refresher. You have a dashboard that's kind of dedicated to informing you around everything around your network visibility in the cluster. You'll have a histogram of everything that's going on, and that's why it can be very powerful, not just only from a policy enforcement, but also from a visibility and controls perspective. This is kind of the policy section. If you haven't seen that before, we offer a very granular and tiered approach to how you can create network policies, and both, so that you can have a way to uniformly enforce them, but also give access to the developers to create their own or use our built-in recommendation engine to do so. One thing I want to kind of highlight is this view of the endpoints. So those are all the actual pod IPs that we have, and those are only locally significant in the cluster. So your FortiGate is not going to be aware of those, but it's going to be needs to be aware of once the pod is actually deployed on a node. We need to make sure that FortiGate understands that the traffic for this specific application is coming from this specific node, and that's kind of the gist of the kind of the integration today. So if we let me go back. I know, let's show you this slide before we talk about the demo, but we usually try to use an application, a sample application here, to demonstrate the capability. So I already have an application that's composed of a front end that's in the DMZ, 2 microservices, and a back end, and they're all running in the same namespace. That's called the storefront. That's the name of the application. And the idea here is that with this integration, as we scale the application, we're going to be specifically scaling the front end component of the application. We want to make sure that the policy that we created for this front end service that needs to access the Microsoft suite is dynamically populated. So that way, as we add more pods, as you as an admin don't have to go and recreate or change anything statically or manually in FortiGate. So if we go back to this, my screen share, let's take a look. So hopefully you guys see my terminal here. This is the application that's running. You can see that I have a couple of services. Specifically, let's look at the front end service here. We have only one pod that's made up of four containers, but it's only still one pod, and it's running in worker 1. We labeled, actually, let's see. So we labeled this pod to be in the DMZ firewall zone, the DMZ, and that's how we want to associate any pod with that label to an upstream FortiGate address group, right? So anything with this label, basically this was a pre-assumption around how when we created the controller and the configuration for the controller to talk to FortiGate, anything with this label is going to be once it scales or once it's added to the cluster, it's going to be populated in FortiGate. So just to kind of remind you here, if we go back to the services or the addresses, you can see here with this label or the address group that is Kubernetes-DMZ, since we only have one pod running on worker one, it's going to only have the worker one associated as a source interface or source VM in this case or node that's going to be associated with this address group. So let's try and scale this service to, instead of one, let's look at two. So as we scale the service, let's take a look here, and actually we can see that right here from the Tigera Calico Enterprise interface. We can see that those both endpoints. So we have two pods right now, with running now on worker one and worker two with the labels that we suggested. And now, if we take a look, hopefully, demo gods, let me refresh because we have, I think, a 10 or 30-second rule here. And here we go. So automatically, since we have two pods right now, one running on worker one, one running on worker two, automatically this address group was altered and was changed by the Tigera FortiGate controller. And now any policies will adhere to respecting traffic coming from those sources, worker one and worker two. Now you might ask, and sorry, one final thing. If we wanted to create a policy, as I said earlier, I already pre-created a policy that with the source of this address group, now it has worker one and worker two, and it's trying to go to login.microsoft.com. It's going to be allowed to. So that way you have full enforcement from the pod all the way through your existing FortiGate infrastructure to access whatever resources that were implemented using those security controls. So then you might ask, just one last point here, you might ask, like, all right, so what if you have multiple pods that are not part of this application that are also running on those nodes? And that, I want to remind you that that's where the power of having a multi-layered security approach come in handy. Calico itself offers a very extensive policy enforcement all the way in every node. It's a distributed approach for both ingress and egress traffic. So let's assume there's another pod that is running on worker one or worker two that is trying to go to login.microsoft.com. If it is not part of an application or label that is associated with our application policy that is defined, Calico will be preventing that traffic before it even gets to FortiGate. So just a reminder there that with this kind of multi-layered approach, you have a policy enforcement at every node in both directions, ingress and egress. You have a tiered approach on how you can actually enforce that as part of Calico Enterprise, but also you have a way to associate and continue enforcing that and extend that security model to your existing environment with a FortiGate environment with this integration between Tigera and Calico Enterprise and FortiGate. So with that, I wanted to keep it a brief demo of this integration. I want to remind you of the key takeaways of today's discussion. If we're not aware of Calico Enterprise itself, hopefully now you're more aware of us as a solution for your Kubernetes, for securing your Kubernetes cluster and helping you along the way to get to production and secure your production workloads. We're trusted by numerous financial services, medical, healthcare, web and SaaS companies today. And with the latest Calico Enterprise 2.7, now we actually have a full integration with our partner Fortinet and their existing, more than 400,000 customers, as far as I know, which is a great partner to have to extend this capability to Kubernetes with this integration. Again, this is for both north-south as well as east-west traffic. Right now, you have those capabilities to enforce policy without losing your existing investment in Fortinet environment. Finally, I think I mentioned this earlier, we have, Fortinet has this Fabric-Ready Technology Alliance partner. So if you go to their site, Calico Enterprise is now a part of this program, and we're really excited about that. Michael will talk about some of the resources that you have moving forward. If you want to dig more, there's a solution brief that we can actually point to after in the next slide. So with this, Michael, you want to take it from here, and then I'll take the question and answers section.
Yeah, sure. So while I'm talking about some of the more opportunities for you guys to learn about the subject, please go ahead and ask your questions. There's a 30-second delay between you typing the question and us seeing it, so that's why I go over these things. So here are the opportunities you guys have. So we actually have a Fortinet online workshop coming up on the 31st with Nico. It'll be very much like what you've just seen from this presentation, but it'll be a 2-hour-long online training, and it will go in depth. Normally, for these trainings of this type, for this length, we charge $49, but everyone here at this webinar will be able to get in free to this online workshop with the code FelixFree. Felix is the name of the Calico cat, in case you didn't know, a little trivia. And you can find that, the login, the registration for that at our events page, which is tigera.io/events. We also have, to the right, we have the solution brief that is available in the attachments and links section, but it also is available in our resource section. And in case you did not know, we have just recently launched a free trial of Calico Enterprise. Now, this is hosted in infrastructure that we provide you. So there is nothing for you to spin up. There's no headache around that. We have use cases you can walk through to kind of test through. These are the most common use cases that we've seen in helping hundreds of enterprise customers get their Kubernetes security going. And it's free, and you get to see Calico Enterprise firsthand and see what all the buzz is all about. So all you need to do is go to tigera.io/trial and complete the trial form. Once we approve you, you are good to go. You'll be sent credentials, and you're off on your way to go ahead and try out Calico Enterprise. So the other ways that you can interact with us, of course, if you would like to get a personalized demo, that is always possible, and you can just go to /demo. If you'd like to contact us and ask us some questions, or like I said, request copies of the trial, of the slides, you can go ahead and use contact form, or you can email contact@tigera.io. And of course, our social handles are twitter.io and LinkedIn. We're Tigera, so you guys should be able to find us. We announce everything, all of our events, and we're going to be doing in the neighborhood of 3 events a week going forward. We typically did one every 2 weeks, but in light of the current events and the cancellation of most of the actual in-person events, we're going to go full on into online events. So look for those notices on our site. Because you attended, you'll probably get another email. You can always opt out of those emails at any time. But you can also go to our subscription center and tell us what you want to hear about. So those are the things I'd like to let you guys know about. They're pretty standard, but I would encourage you guys, the Fortinet workshop, we are trying to limit the total number of people to 40, so this will sell out quickly. So I would encourage you guys to go sign up for that, especially because you get it free. So that's all I have to talk about opportunities to learn. Looks like we have some questions. So Nico, I'll turn it back over to you to answer the questions.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, we have some time to to answer the questions. One question was how easy it is to migrate from Calico open source to Calico Enterprise in production. We actually have a full section in our docs. I wish I can share them right now, but if you go to docs.tigera.io, there is a section under Getting Started to the left hand. It says Migrate from Calico to Calico Enterprise with specific instructions depending on the different platforms. So I encourage you to look for that. I mean, we've worked with a handful of customers who were actually most of our customers are already existing Calico open source users, and they went through the kind of the migration. So I encourage you to kind of take a look, and it's going to highlight the assumptions and requirements and the caveats associated with the migration. Hopefully that helps. So another question is, so if I were to create a new Kubernetes service, then the service alongside with the pod IP part of that service will be pushed to FortiGate. Is that the logic? Yes. However, as I kind of alluded to earlier, you don't have to do anything manually when you create services or you create deployments or scale them for this integration to work. However, there still needs the step between associating service labels or deployment labels or overall Kubernetes labels to FortiGate address groups. So if you already have some form of a taxonomy mapping associated with what applications or groups or whatever it is you have in Kubernetes that you want to associate it with whichever address groups in FortiGate, you can do that once. And then depending on how you label your deployments, that will already be propagated to FortiGate automatically. So you don't have to do it every time you create an application or so forth. Hopefully that helps. I have questions there. Can you go through where you see the mapping between pods, containers, and nodes again? Thanks. Beyond visibility, what are the use cases of the integration? So yeah, absolutely. So again, we're from Calico's perspective, we're very native to and Calico Enterprise, we're very native to the existing tooling around the CLI tooling. So of course, kubectl is always a great tool to just associate pods and nodes. But also, if we go back to the screen sharing, if you see, hopefully you see my screen, we have a view of the nodes. So those are the actual VMs, or in this case, cloud instances that we are running with all the information around them and which endpoints are sitting on them. But also the endpoints. In this case, the endpoints mean pods. So you can drill down into the pods and see, in this case, you can use native Kubernetes labels. So for example, if I want to see the DMZ labeled pods, there are two. You can see where they're residing. This is the full name of the pod. Actually, no, this is the full name of the interface, the endpoint that Calico manages. This is the pod's name, which node it's running on, the IP address of the pod itself, the Calico managed node, the namespace, and the labels and policies that are affecting this pod. So there are multiple ways you can get that information from CLI, from the Calico UI. It's definitely up to you. All right, taking on the next. So the second part of the question was, beyond visibility, what are the use cases of the integration? Great question. So visibility, it's not only just visibility into FortiGate, you actually have a mechanism right now to use your existing policies and security measures in FortiGate for Kubernetes workloads. That's kind of the idea. So that you can protect your existing databases or your environment for traffic that is coming from Kubernetes clusters. So it's not just purely visibility, it's also about extending the security measures that you have today from with this integration. Next question, is there a way to define policy between services running on a single node? Great question. So as I alluded to earlier, Calico policy, so Calico is both the CNI, so basically providing connectivity for the pod, but also enforcing policy and managing the policy in a distributed way. So the answer to that question is yes, but it's being enforced by Calico itself. So if you remember when I showed the policies the policy tiers, those are Kubernetes network policies and Calico network policies. So it doesn't matter where the pod is running, even if there are two pods, part of two services running on the same node. If your policy says this service cannot talk to this service and they're both on the same node, then the Calico itself will enforce that policy directly on the node itself. So the answer to that is yes. But it's not done through FortiGate yet. It's done through Calico at this point. Next question. Also, what is the recovery mechanism in case the FortiGate does not respond to API calls within the time? Will Tigera keep retrying to make sure the policies are in sync? The answer is yes. We do have a retry and fallback as well, and full log so you can see and troubleshoot if there's any issues with this integration. And you can also set up the retry or the polling interval on the retry interval for this. The next question, what happens if front-end the question is, it's not very clear to me. What happens if front-end is ingress? Will you share the ingress IP in addition to worker IP? So again, this specific integration at this point is for traffic leaving the pods, going and trying to access external databases within your environment or internet services. So for ingress-based security measures, you can have that enforcement, and you can also have it at the Calico level, but I'm not sure, I'm still unsure about the ingress-specific point that is made in that question. So please, maybe you can clarify as part of a different question what you mean by will you share the ingress IP in addition to worker node IP? Another question we have, two more questions. Will a future phase of the integration make it possible to push network policies from FortiGate to Calico policy? I understood that the current phase involves only FortiGate receiving Calico endpoint details. That is actually, that is the plan, to have a two-way integration, so you can actually define policies in Fortinet Manager and actually have Calico enforce them. That is the plan as well. If you have specific use cases or specific ideas and you are an existing Fortinet customer and or an existing Calico user and customer, please reach out to us, whether it is here or through the Calico user group in Slack or through the resources that Michael mentioned. Would love to get your feedback. Just another reminder that this whole integration was actually due to a mutual customer who needed this to actually happen, a set of customers actually. So we're actually very adamant around receiving feedback on what are the best ways for this integration, because we've seen a lot. So help us prioritize, help us kind of shape this integration and provide that feedback. There's a comment around the training. This is probably a question for Michael. Looks like the training is already unavailable. I don't know if Michael, you can take that question.
Yeah, sure. So if it's already unavailable, it shouldn't be. I'll go have a look, and we definitely can make room for more. I just need to make a few emails to a few people, and we can do that. If you can just go ahead and send your request to the contact@tigera.io. I'm on that list, and that goes to a lot of people. So we will definitely take care of you, whoever you are. We can't see who asked the questions. That's the only problem. So yeah. Good for you guys.
Thank you, Michael. Last question. It was the clarifying question. Appreciated that you clarified. You mean the assigned ingress load balancer IP where pod IP is netted to this? The answer to that is no. Right now, the extent of the integration is populating the FortiGate address groups with the source IP of the actual VM or node that the pod is sitting on, because again, that's, Fortinet is usually at the layer where you want to protect both east-west and north-south, anything that is leaving the node itself or coming to the node. So that's kind of the extent of this integration right now. So there's nothing specific to the load balancer IP or any virtual IP integration at this point. Hopefully that answers your question. A great set of questions here. So thanks for that.
And actually, to answer the previous question about the tickets, they are now open. There was a setting that was not changed, so the tickets are now open for that.
So final question that just was that just came in. Is it conceivable to leverage Calico Enterprise Fortinet integration when running Calico without Kubernetes? In other words, in an environment where we're using Calico to provide security policy between VMs, host endpoints, not between container pods. Great question. So we do actually have that capability, not the integration yet, but actually I don't know the answer to that specifically. Right now, we do have that capability of using Calico without Kubernetes, just using Calico to enforce policy in a very consistent way. So if you have workloads running in Kubernetes and workloads running on VMs, you can actually run Calico on those VMs, and you can create the same set of policies and have it enforced both on the pods as well as natively on the VMs. We do have that capability today, but as far as I know, and I need to probably double check, as far as I know, the FortiGate integration specifically is looking for pods and pod labels, and not looking for, just overall workloads that are not, within containers. But I'm actually not 100% sure to that answer. Cool. With that, hopefully that helps. I can try to find the answer to that question, and maybe if you reach out on Slack or Nico at tigera.io, that's my email. Please reach out, and I'll be able to help. But with that, I know that we still have some more time. Appreciate the time that you've given to us today. As Michael said, please always feel free to review this recording. It will be on demand for you afterwards. Please stay safe and healthy with your families, and looking forward to having you on additional webinars from Tigera.
Yeah, thank you guys for attending. And I just saw a question about the code not working. I will go in and double check that right after the webinar. So thank you so much for saying that. Okay, with that, Nico, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for attending, and we hopefully will see you soon. Goodbye.